New York at this time, rolling around in a crew and a posse of 10 people or more, it was like a thing. And they was like the first guys to kind of do it as a group in music. The crew love of it. They had a slang, they had so many like different layers to what they brought in the game.
Welcome to BT Talks. I'm your host, Symphony Thompson, and with me I have none other than Mr. Ghetto Fabolous himself, Fabolous.
What's up, Symphony?
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, I'm blessed, I can't complain.
I love that. Now, I'm gonna ask again, but this time with taking a breath to really ask. You do so much, so really, outside of all the busy, how are you?
I'm good, mentally, physically, spiritually, I'm in a good place.
I like that. Alignment is like what I like to call it. Now, I have to start, I can't, sing that or start out by calling Mr. Ghetto Fabolous without congratulating you.
Thank you.
Because you recently celebrated, and I don't know if you know or not, but 22 years since the debut of Fabulous Ghetto Fabolous.
Yeah, my baby turned 22. Like your first album is kind of like your first child, you know what I'm saying? So
how does that feel?
It feels good. It also shows you how long it's been since, when you first presented yourself to the world almost. And at the same time, it shows, how much the music, how much you've changed. You can look at, all the things from that time, even just taking a glance back at the videos or, the stories behind the music, and you can see how much has changed or evolved or even stayed the same. You know what I'm saying?
Now, something key that you said is the stories behind the music. That's always intriguing to us, especially as fans, because for us going back and listening to your baby that's 22, it brings a lot of memories and like key points, but I know it does the same for you. So I want to break down some of those.
Okay.
We got to start with Can't Deny It.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Can't Deny It, at the time, I didn't know how symbolic it was as far as like connecting the East and the West Coast, but when I look back, that was one of the first songs that had kind of happened again with the East and the West after, the big moments of the East Coast, West Coast beef. So me collaborating with Nate Dogg kind of was showing that things were kind of getting back together a little bit again. And I didn't look at it that strongly then at the time, so that's why I say now all those years have passed and looking back, I was like, and somebody had mentioned it to me and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I do see that, you know what I mean? And me and Nate, kind of built a relationship from the song, and before he passed, rest in peace, Nate. Before he passed, when we just would kick it, and I just talked a lot. He was a little bit older than me, and I'm sure he had a lot of history from the Death Row days and all that stuff. But he used to just kick it with me and just give me a lot of game. I was kind of fresh, my fresh start. You know what I mean? So all the things that he gave me, stories, game, advice, you know what I'm saying? I was always open ears for it.
Absolutely. Now, seeing and understand the impact now is one thing, but even when you think about when you were younger, you didn't understand the impact. How did y'all two even meet or come together? How did y'all get introduced to do the song together?
We had reached out to their peoples, and I think it was slightly connected by the producer, Rick Rock and DJ Clue. We kind of I want to say attacked it from a couple different angles.
I love that.
And Nate was down to do it. And when I heard it back and heard his voice over it, it was kind of just a moment for me, because it also showed that I was making real traction in the game, just getting that kind of feature from a guy that I had listened to some of his, hooks and songs on, classic Death Row songs. So it was kind of like, all right, I'm in the game, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm some of the guys that I grew up listening to is rocking with me as well. So, it gives you that moment as well.
And it paid off for you to even have that knowledge too, because you've created such timeless pieces that still today, like I said, when we go back and listen to it, it's like, this still riding. It still feels good today.
Yeah, it was definitely a great feeling of a song, you know what I'm saying? It showed, it kind of combined East Coast and West Coast, me representing the East, of course, and Nate with the West, and then even the producer, Rick Rock, he was from the Bay. And so it was kind of like a little gumbo of areas, you know what I mean, on a song, so that worked well. And then what was another crazy thing about the song was that it released
on 9/11.
Yeah, right before 9/11. And Little X, Director X, had he shot the video, and he had all these symbols of stars and stripes in the video. And so when 9/11 happened, my video became like the #1 video on MTV and everywhere because of its symbolic nature of the stars and stripes. And I guess, you know, people felt like America needed to see some stars and stripes at the time, you know what I'm saying? And I was fortunate to be able to, and it was, of course, no knowledge. We didn't know that, you know, that was gonna happen at that time or anything like that. So it was kind of like an unfortunate coincidence, but you know, we were able to have a great video and get a great start on our video, you know what I mean, using, you know, the what they say, American pride, yeah, you know what I'm saying, we had to use that for our
the American
video.
dream. Yeah, no, and I, like you said, it's an unfortunate blessing in a sense, but you know, it worked out because I actually remember watching you on 106 in Park. And Free asked you a question. This was obviously before the album came out, and she asked, "What are you going to be doing on the 11th?" Do you remember what your response was?
I don't remember what it was, but I felt like I just thought I would be, you know, you just dropped your album, you would be doing so much. And I remember that day that I got a call from one of my managers, and it was like, "Yo, everything's canceled," and I'm like, "What?" Because I hadn't seen. You know, the scene with the Twin Towers at that time yet. I was just waking up, and you know, I'm thinking, you know, the day would go as planned. And he's like, "Yo, turn on the TV." And the first thing when I turned on the TV, that's the first thing I seen. And I was like, you know, still hadn't really like processed the whole situation yet. You know, so now, of course, I did understand, you know, why everything was canceled, and you know, just now started like educating myself to what's going on. That was just a lot to wake up to, you know what I mean? Like,
especially when you think it's gonna be one way, and then it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a bad dream. Let me go back to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't this ain't real.
Yeah, no, I remember that too, just it being surreal. But I also remember hearing your music as well, and it was just like, even now, like looking back and doing the research, it's like, dang, yeah, it did happen on that day. And you know, it gives us something else to look to as well around that time, and like you said, what it was a symbol of. Now, next up, of course, you know, I gotta bring up Young and Holla Back. What's the story behind that? How was that able to be created?
Youngin was created in Virginia with Pharrell, and you know, the Neptunes were a huge production team at the time, and we went down to Virginia and to Pharrell's studio, and I remember we were playing around with a couple different records, and one thing he had in mind for me was what turned out to be Holla Back Youngin, and I remember him giving me the instruction of you know, rapping kind of in like a Vanilla Ice flow. And I was like, what? Like, you know what I'm saying? And he was like, no, I'm not saying that you gotta like rap what he was rapping about, just his flow, and say your own things that you wanna say in there. And I still was a little, but being who Pharrell was and what he had done in the game, I said, you know, I'm gonna trust him. And you know, it actually turned out to be the kind of song that you never really heard that way before. And you know what I'm saying, and I think that's what him being a producer and such a great producer, he knows how to take something and make it special, and I think that's what he did with that joint. It was not like a fight, but it was definitely a record that I was like, I don't know about, you know what I'm saying, I don't know about that one. And but I just trusted him, and it came out to be all right. It worked out.
And sometimes you have to trust the process, because not only is that song just a hit, but just even like the key parts, like people say in conversation, like the who. You know, I have to ask, who's hooting? Who's doing the who?
Pharrell, I believe.
Yeah.
Because he had the whole thing out there. Even when he was doing it in the studio, I was like,
That's what I was going. What was your reaction to
you know what I'm saying? Like, and just even where I was coming from, you know, I was young and coming out of the streets, and you know, coming off of the mixtapes of DJ Clue. It was just seemed like I was like, this is what the industry do, man. They pull you in here and they try to get you to do these commercial, you know what I mean? But I was just like, you know, I was game too, and I knew that, you know, I had to make different type of records as far as like making an album than what I was making, you know, on a mixtape level or a freestyle level and stuff like that. So I was open to try it and see how it came out. You know what I'm saying? If I didn't like it after the fact, then I could say that I didn't like it. But I didn't never shy away from trying, you know, certain things.
And I think it always works out for the best when you do it that way as well.
Sometimes.
Look, but I'm saying afterwards, because you still have a choice after. If you have the choice after.
Right.
It's just good to try it, but if you have the option of saying like,
that's
yeah,
a blessing if you have a choice. There's certain
Exactly.
people who say they don't, you know, especially in that stage. That's my very first album. I'm pretty much listening to a lot of what is given to me and delivered to me. So, you know what I mean? I still would take shots at it, but, you know, I didn't really know how it would turn out, to be honest. I was a young artist in the game at that point, and, you know, I was just taking direction. And luckily, they led me in the right way.
Right.
You know,
Praise
so.
God for that, right? Something that you've like really honed in on, and a lot of artists want that formula of being able to get that hit that's on the radio. It's like you found that formula, and it's like hit after hit. Not even looking back, looking over your career in its totality, how important do you still think like that is when you're looking at your career, and how much it has contributed to your success?
I definitely think a radio hit at the time was different than it is now. I definitely think that it still can help you, and it's of course can set your career on course. I just think that now I wouldn't, if I was dealing with an artist, I wouldn't have them just aiming for that. I would have them aiming for, you know, being the best artist they can be, making the best songs, bringing the best of themselves out to music, and being the best artist that they can be. I think the spectrum of how music is received now has grown so much. It's so broad, and it's like it's not confined to just you having a radio hit and everybody knowing you through radio. So that's the only reason like I wouldn't like coach them to like how to make a radio hit. I would just coach them to like, you know, become explore, you know, expand your artistry, try things. Your look, you know what I mean, how you present yourself, how you know, your style, what's you, what makes your music identified by to you, you know what I'm saying? And that's what I would coach more than just going for a radio hit. I mean, you could be you, and then radio is gonna connect to that as well, you know what I'm saying? So I think in that time, radio was definitely a different place. It had a much stronger hold on who was it and who was not it. And of course things have changed. You know, the internet changed things, social media has changed things, music growing has changed things. You know, there's some people who have never had a radio hit who, you know what I mean, that are huge artists who tour around the world, and you know what I mean? So that's why I would have a different approach now than then.
All right, so next I want to dive into the crates.
Got some vinyls here?
I do have some vinyls. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to place it in your hand. You can look at it front and back and just tell me what it makes you feel, because for me, music is such a time capsule. It takes me back to specifically when I remember either listening to the song, the person, or the album.
Vinyls take me back instantly. This is the first way I was presented to and introduced to rap, period.
I have literally at home vinyls that my grandmother gave me. I still have tapes and I still have CDs. Can't let them go.
You know what my first vinyl was? Michael Jackson's Thriller, I think.
Really? Who purchased it for you?
My mom.
Yeah. Shout out to moms.
Yeah.
All right, first up, Kendrick Lamar. What are your first thoughts when you see this vinyl?
Yeah, first thoughts is I never saw this as a vinyl. Even when I just think of vinyls, for some reason, I always think of the older ones. So like I've never like this is like it kind of looks weird to me. I'm like, why is this a vinyl? Like I was listening to this on the internet or something like that. Like, but yeah, it's just like a new vinyl to me.
Yeah.
But it does feel like the listen of the album sounds like it could have been an album that came out when vinyl was. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it makes me want to see the, I guess the artwork that's connected to it. Because I don't think I've really ever seen the artwork because I listened to it on the streaming site. Yeah. Okay.
All right, here we go. Next up.
B.I.G. R.I.P. B.I.G.
Life After Death.
Life After Death. This is one of my favorite albums. I feel like it's such a well-rounded album. Biggie just was in his bag by at this point. You know what I mean? I think the first album was his introduction. And if you look at like or listen to the growth of Biggie from Ready to Die to Life After Death, it was like he grew up a lot. Yeah. Even as far as like an artist or how to make songs and how to like he definitely grew up a lot.
All right. Illmatic.
Illmatic always kind of connects to me and takes me back because I'm from the project, so this kind of like feels like this was a picture that I might have took before or something when I was a little kid. The buildings, the oh, it just connected automatically just from the projects and little nappy-headed kid in the projects. So
you gotta take like a double look. Like, wait a minute, is that me? Okay.
I had this album too. I had, of course, Biggie. I had this album as well. This is one of my favorite albums all time too.
I like that. All right, next up. You already
50.
see it. Yep, you saw it. 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying.
This is another album I don't connect none of these albums to like vinyl. I don't know why. Like I guess because I'm like a little older, so like all of the vinyls I ever seen, they were like older albums. This I think was the CD era kind of for me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This was a great album. I think 50's trajectory up to this album was so like it just was like perfect. It was like the way that what we just were talking about with artist development and the marketing and the connection to Dr. Dre and Eminem, and everything just kind of aligned really well for this project, and he delivered. He gave you great songs and great gangster songs too, like great like street songs. So like, you know what I mean, they weren't like just street raps, like they were like street songs. At least like I remember listening to this and just remembering how good, let's say if it was 16 songs on the album, at least like 13, 14 were like songs that could have been like singles, like, you know what I mean? It was like good songs like that. So shout out to 50, man. I know this album did a lot of numbers, man.
Talk about marketing. I mean, he gave us the music, the movies, the game. Like, come on, marketing on point. I love it. Next up. Outkast.
I really don't know much about this album. I'm a real New York City kid, and I don't think at this time when this album came out, much South music got played in New York.
Yeah.
I think I've just seen a lot of that like being talked about on the internet recently, like with Birdman and Jermaine Dupri, and it's kind of true because I guess hip hop at that time was very regional.
Right.
And before the internet, you know, you kind of like heard the artists that you in where you lived.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, the South was definitely. I definitely saw. I think a a song or video or two in that era, but I definitely had no access to this album. But over time, and when I did get to listen to some Outkast music, I was a fan of how they were a group, but kind of different in the same, like, you know what I mean? Like, they were different, but gave you, they were like, it was like an opposites attract kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I felt like, Andre 3000 was, I don't know if he gets, it's like, people just always say he's dope, but I think he's also a wordsmith. Like, he's able to bend and combine words and use his accent to, like, I don't know if people connect that as much, you know what I'm saying? Between him and like Eminem, they're like wordsmith who can really, and I pay attention to that because I was always, tapped into like how people use their words and bend their words and use different words and metaphors and stuff like that. So I definitely tapped into Andre 3000 with that.
Absolutely. All right. Taking you to the next.
Wu-Tang. I was a big Wu-Tang fan. And then with this album dropping, I just remember, like, also in New York at this time, rolling around in a crew and a posse of 10 people or more. It was like a thing. And they was like the first guys to kind of do it as a group in music. And we just had never seen it, but it was also like dope because it was like, you know what I mean? It was like all your friends, but as a rap group, like you and your friends, but as a rap group. So I definitely remember this album. Again, I don't think I had the vinyl. I think I had a tape. This might have been a tape era for me. Yeah, I'm that old. I had a tape.
To flip it.
Yeah, I had a tape. Had to let that slip out, but yeah, I had a tape. But this is one of my favorite albums as well. Again, just the crew love of it, of different guys, representing where they're from. They had a slang. They had so many like different layers to what they brought in the game. Just the talk, the way they talked in Staten Island. They had a connection to the Chinese kung fu movies that everybody loved or grew up watching. I think weed was starting to get smoked a lot in this time too. So Method Man and like, the whole smoking culture had popped on the scene a lot with them. And overall, besides just the crew, I think each one of them like had their own unique way of being a group. They were like a superhero crew or something like that, and they all had their own talent and style and voice, and it just meshed together really well. And some of them linked with others that were, you could hear like a connection to them. I think I heard Raekwon and Ghost, their connection might have started from this project as well, and then it led to Raekwon's album, and they were more on the album together. So like it was just different. It was just different hearing so many guys together, coming from so many different angles, and just representing that crew love. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying, in hip hop.
Absolutely. I think it's always funny, like when you ask, can you name everybody in the Wu-Tang? And it's like, I think I can.
Yeah, it was a lot of them.
That's what I'm saying.
It was deep.
Last and certainly not least,
Tribe Called Quest.
Yes, sir. I
remember this album, and I of course remember this cover. I think the cover was really big. Shout out to Phife Dawg, rest in peace, Phife Dawg. I always thought Phife Dawg was nice. His lyrical, his style. I think he even wore jerseys back then. Like I just remember a lot about Phife in that era, and I remember A Tribe Called Quest like being a group, but like different from. Different from like the street groups, like a Mobb Deep or NWA. Like they were a group, but they were like in a different, they had a different like feel to them and look to them. It wasn't about being tough or, you know, it was just like, you know, like some dope hip hop music, but coming from a different perspective. You know what I'm saying? I don't remember that about it.
You know, even hearing you talk about some of these albums, it's like a lot of those things reflect you when you talk about having layers, being unique, the wordplay. Like those are things that also mirror who you are as well and what you've contributed to hip hop. So while you're giving flowers to all these, I want to make sure that I give you your flowers of the contribution that you've made to hip hop, especially as we celebrate 50 years of hip hop and as well as 22 years for your first debut album. So.
Yeah, a lot of these projects and artists, you know, kind of, you know, especially the ones that came before, but you know, they were seasoning to me becoming an artist. You know what I'm saying? My first favorite rapper was Big Daddy Kane and Biggie and Jay-Z and LL and a lot of Nas and, you know, a lot of those guys, and you can see kind of, you know, some of their style or their whatever sprinkled in kind of my style, because that's the music that I grew up listening to, and kind of the what helped make me the artist that I am today, you know.
But thank you again.
Thank
Congratulations on everything.
Appreciate it.
And happy 50 years of hip hop.